The UK Prime Minister, who initially advocated herd immunity as part of his government's response to COVID-19, tonight remains in intensive care in a London hospital. Boris Johnson was admitted to St Thomas's Hospital in central London late on Sunday when his condition deteriorated after suffering from coronavirus symptoms for about 10 days. He was moved to an intensive care unit overnight. CNN correspondent Nick Paton-Walsh joins us now from Downing Street. Nick, what is the latest on the Prime Minister's condition?
Well, I have to tell you, overnight we've received no extra information as to his condition. The last information coming out was reports that he was receiving oxygen treatment and a lengthy statement from Downing Street, which towards the end of it raised a somewhat troubling situation that he was in ICU as a precaution should he, quote here, should he require assistance from a ventilator. Now, of course, Prime Minister being on assisted breathing like that would be an exceptionally serious development indeed. But the latest statements from Downing Street will suggest that he is conscious. But there has, of course, been a time lag and, of course, considerations of his own medical privacy and national security in terms of the information that has been handed out by Downing Street over the past very complex 36 hours. Any government at all losing its Prime Minister to a medical situation like this is an exceptionally complicated task. But yesterday, when we heard from the man currently standing in his place, quote, where necessary, as is the current words being used by the British government to describe how Dominic Raab, the former Foreign Secretary, who is now standing in as First Secretary of State in Boris Johnson's role. He stood in front of the British public late yesterday afternoon and said that Boris Johnson had, quote, a comfortable night in hospital pretty much at the same time where his doctors were advising he was being moved swiftly into an intensive care unit. This is a position that no government ever wants to be in, to have to actually accept that your leader firstly requires a hospital admission, as we heard 36 hours ago. Back then, they said it was for precautionary tests to ensure he was getting the best medical care, and then to have to update the public 24 hours later to say, in fact, he is now being moved to an intensive care unit. Exceptionally grave times indeed for the British government. They have key decisions ahead in the next week or so as to whether to continue the lockdown on movements for the British public to try and stop the flow of COVID-19 within the population. They've had some possible good news in the past few days, suggesting that perhaps the number of cases isn't rising at the same speed that it had been in the past. And
I think we may have just lost Nick there. That was Nick Paton-Walsh updating us on the situation with Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, who is still in St Thomas's Hospital in central London, and he is in an intensive care unit, as Nick was saying there, in case he needs further assistance breathing. We do know from earlier reports he was receiving oxygen.